Okay, the session is being recorded, so if you want to actually review it, you will find it on the e-learning page where you can review it. This session is meant to be a little bit of an orientation before you start the actual assignment, so it should give you a little bit of a background to the assignment as well. So we're just briefly going to look at the learner guideline, what you see in section A of the learner guideline, what you see in section B of the learner guideline. The A part of the learner guideline is usually to give you a broader picture of where the module fits into the actual curriculum of the postgraduate studies and how it conforms to the way that it was registered. Section B then is the nitty-gritties of the module, and it consists of various parts, components if you like, which you will see in your learner pacer, your pacer that tells you how you should progress on your studies. So that is aligned to the slideshow and the next couple of issues that we're going to discuss. Prescribed learning material, you should know by now that the prescribed textbook is given, but there are so many other material that you can actually look at. The yearbook tells you about the guidelines for the font, styles, formatting, etc. You can also look at the postgraduate tutorial letter, and very, very important is the Harvard guidelines on how to do the referencing and citations in the text. And of course your learner guidelines, which is important that you can use in support of your handbook and all the other materials. On the website student portal, there's a lot of material as well to assist you. Please make use of that. Assessments, your assessments for this module, you most probably know already. The assignment, which is due on the 13th of March, which makes up then 20% of your year mark. The assignment is obviously open book format because you do it at home. But that also means that you cannot just copy and paste and regurgitate what is said in the textbook. You are supposed to take that theory and information from the handbook and apply it in practice. And you can look at the case studies in the handbook on how that type of theory is applied within each of the chapters that we are looking at. If you are copying from the textbook, you better reference very carefully, otherwise you can be accused of plagiarism, which is not good. Please, very, very seriously, plagiarism is considered in a very serious light. The assignment is basically consists of questions requiring application of theory. So usually you have a case study and you are asked to use that information from the case study in applying some of the theory. So for instance, you have to use the case study to actually identify the marketing problem and write the problem in context and develop a problem statement, etc. We will talk more about that later on. So the assignment and the exam then comes at the end of the module, and that makes up 80% of your final mark. But you again have the ability to actually take your books with you. The problem is that you don't really have time in the exam to try and find the information. So you have to get to know your textbook and your learner guideline very well. so that you can quickly find that information when you actually do the exam. Again, a student pacer, lot of details spelling out exactly what you are expected to know under that particular section. Use the resources on the e-learning site. Get to know your learner guideline. Get to know your handbook, how to find information in the handbook, and very important, how to reference properly. So if we look at the total module content that is incorporated into this module, you have the introduction, and then you have part 1, nature and scope of the marketing research, problem and context, constructs, problem statements, research questions. Part 3 is then the research design and methodology. Part 4 is the research proposal. Part 5 is how do I conduct and actually evaluate and discuss qualitative research. Part 6 is quantitative research. Part 7, how to write a literature review, which is usually in the research process. It comes much earlier. And then part 8, when I've already done the research, how do I write up the results, how do I write the recommendations, and how do I make conclusions. So as you can see here, part 1, 2 and 3 is the parts that's covered in the assignment, and we will quickly go through these 3 parts so that you have some background when you actually start your assignment. Part 1, as it is described in the PACER, the nature and scope of research, understanding the nature and scope of marketing research, which can be quite broad, and then how do I actually do marketing research, those process steps. The second part is a part problem and context. If I've identified a marketing problem, I must now sort of read up and explore and write down the context, the background in which this actual problem plays out. Otherwise, the reader will not understand it, or if you have to brief somebody else on the problem, you have to be able to explain to them the context and so on. Constructs is a term that is used quite often here, and we will describe and explore a little bit what is meant by that. The problem statement is then one sentence only, less than 2 lines long, that actually delimits my research. That says, this is the scope of my research, this is what I am going to look at. Then your research questions and the research objectives then comes from that. So what you need to do under this section 2 is be able to identify and write the problem in context, to understand the underlying complexity of the research problem and context. What we mean here is that very often it's like you going to a doctor and saying, okay, I've got a headache. There's so many factors that can play a role in this headache. We actually have to go deeper and find out what exactly is causing the headache. Same with the research problem. So it's the underlying complexity that we're talking about here. Analyzing a marketing research problem, that is usually like a marketing audit. You use some models to actually benchmark your current company activities against, to see where there's gaps and where there's areas to be improved. Review, determine constructs. Again, this refers to the fact of really thinking of what exactly am I going to research. And based on that, then write a proper problem statement that spells out the scope very specifically. Develop some research questions, formulate proper research objectives, and then decide on which would be the most appropriate research tools to explore this problem, to do the research. Okay. Part 3 then of the student pacer is the research design and methodology. Develop the proper research questions. What we usually do is we do a little bit of a brainstorming and so on, and then when we have got all the variables that play a role in the specific topic that you have, you then actually go and find to the theory and the literature to find what questions did other researchers ask in similar designs, that you use to develop a questionnaire or an interview schedule. So you are developing an instrument for the collection of valid and reliable data. Please remember that we use the terms valid and reliable different in research than we do in the common language. So you apply the appropriate research tools for various methods of data collection, and you have to decide on your sample population and who exactly will be part of my sample that I'm going to do the research on, and decide on a sampling method that I'm going to use. So this is what will be covered in the assignment, and remember that your assignment must be submitted 13 March before 3 o'clock. And remember that you really need to actually submit earlier than 3 o'clock, because 3 o'clock everybody tries to submit and the servers get very busy, and if you submit late you will be penalized. So bargain on submitting quite a bit before 3 o'clock, or even the day before is even better. Okay, so part 1, the scope and nature of marketing research. You find that in your handbooks and in your learner guidelines, where you have a planning and a design stage. You identify the problem, you explore the problem, you actually then decide how are you going to go about doing the research. So that is all the planning and design stage. Then you get to the field work and the implementation stage. This is where you take the interview schedule or the survey that you've done and you go out in the field to your sample population and you actually gather the data. And then the analysis and the reporting stage is where I then write up my results, and I really think about it and come to certain conclusions, etc., and making recommendations. So your most common research process steps is defining the problem, the nature of the research inquiry, formulating research objectives, what is my unit of analysis, and in determining whether this is doable or not in the time frame and the money, etc., we have to look at the time dimension, and in the end the company has to make the decision whether this research, spending the time and the money, is worthwhile. How urgent, critical is it to actually get this information, or is it just a nice to have? So when you've actually done this preliminary looking at the problem, this first 5 steps, it should place you in a position where the company can take the decision and say, if we don't have this information that we will gather through the research, there's a very critical risk of our strategy or our intervention not coming to a fruitful conclusion. Or on the other hand, we know most of the stuff. This is just nice to have to confirm certain issues, and then one has to make a decision on the budget and the time dimension. So one looks at the practicalities there. Okay. So what we are saying is that, I'm sure you've seen this analogy quite a couple of times, is that initially when I look at the problem, I see some symptoms there, that something is not working correctly. Say for instance, you've run an intervention and the sales figures is really not what you expected from the intervention. So you see some symptoms there, but you don't really understand why that is. Because maybe on paper, the intervention and the strategy looks great, but in practice, it did not work out to your expectations. So you're not meeting your critical goals that you wanted to look at. So now you've got the symptoms and you spell it out in the problem and context, and now you go a little bit deeper. You go and talk to your manager and to the people on the floor that actually was involved in this particular intervention or in the particular strategy or whatever, and find out what are they saying to you. Why didn't it work out the way that they anticipated? So you are looking at maybe the strategy or intervention on paper, and then what the people are saying about it, etc., etc. And you take that insight from how it actually plays out on the ground, and you compare it to an appropriate model. And that is your marketing analysis, where you actually compare against theory, appropriate theory, to see where there were gaps or bottlenecks, where this strategy or intervention plan missed out. And that brings you to the real issues, the underlying complexities and issues of this particular problem. And that helps you frame a more specific research statement. And from the research statement, you take the keywords and you develop research objectives. And those research objectives is what you need to use, these little action plans that you need to use to find the right information so that it actually informs you why did this not work as well as it should have. Okay, so typical marketing scenarios, there's many more. I just listed a few. Expansion into a new market, so I need to know who's my new target market and what they like and what they need, etc., etc. Launching a new product, profiling a new target market, understanding why a promotion failed, expansion into a new channel, for instance, social media, rebranding a specific product, why the customers are not satisfied, revamping your marketing strategy, growing sales. There's many of them. And so basically what you need to do is, as you go through case studies in the handbook and in the assignment, can you sort of identify the actual marketing problem that they are struggling with? Now, when you've identified the marketing problem or the gap in information, maybe that they need to revamp their strategy or do a new project, you do the marketing audit. As we said, you develop the problem statement and objectives, specify the target population, sample size, preferred data gathering tools, and you delimit the study. So you are specifying what is included and what is excluded from the study. Then the company has a decision to make. Either they can use an external company that can actually do the research on their behalf, or they can do it in-house research department, or you are assigned, say, from the research or from the marketing department to do the research. So when you actually pick an external company, you have to pick an appropriate one. You have to provide a research brief. And the research brief is actually all this on top. The marketing problem, the marketing audit, problem statement, and ideas on the design, etc., what is included, excluded. And then you discuss the research brief with this external company, and you request a proposal from them. RFP, I'm sure you've heard the term. And when they actually give you the proposal, you evaluate the proposal, and then you decide who you are going to ask to do the research. And this is again when the time limits and the budget and stuff comes in, and you decide whether it's worth your while as the company to do it, to ask these people to do it. If you decide, or the company decides, to do the research in-house, so the company, your department, or you as the researcher will then do the research proposal. You will discuss the proposal with the initial person that identified the problem, refine the research design, and then actually do the field research. So you can see there's a little bit of a difference here, but it is a decision point. Usually smaller companies will do it themselves, while larger companies may prefer to get an external company. Typical roles in the marketing and research. So you can maybe see a marketing project manager, or you can be one of the team members involved in the research. Feasibility, it's also called often a feasibility study before you actually do the project, just to check the doability of it. What is included, excluded, what will it cost, time, etc., etc. So part of the in-house team, or you are looking at the interface between the marketing department and the outside, the research company that is doing the research. So you will be communicating with the external company just to make sure that they stay on track and that they will give you the information that you want. But there's the key point now. If you don't know how to do the research, how can you actually give a brief to an external company and check on their progress and the quality of information they have? So it's critical, even if you do not do the research yourself, if the company does it, that you know what to look for and how to evaluate it if they are doing it correctly. Okay? So again, can you identify the main marketing problem in the various case studies that you come across in the module, whether you are looking at the case studies in the handbook, or you are looking at the assignment, or looking at the exam? It is the ability to really go through all the stuff that's written there and then decide what is the key problem, marketing problem, that keeps you from achieving your strategic goals. Okay, now you've got the business problem and you are moving to the research problem. You will find that on page 31 in your learner guideline. And this research problem, or the problem statement, then really delimits what exactly will be included, excluded. And based on the key words in the problem statement, you will then develop research objectives as little action plans that will help you gather the correct data to enable you to answer the research problem and give recommendations regarding the original marketing problem. Okay. Now we come to the next part. We've now thought about the research problem, but now I have to write the problem in context for the topic. And generally the rules are you are moving from general to specific. So you start from a little bit about the industry and the marketplace, recent company background, or that is relevant to the topic. Don't pad it with all kinds of stuff that's got nothing to do with the topic. You are not impressing the examiner. Recent marketing department background or activities that is related to the topic, if it is available. What is the symptoms of the marketing problem? Say, for instance, you are saying that your customer base is shrinking. You don't know why they are leaving. So that is immediately those figures that show that the number of customers leaving the company is increasing. That is a symptom of something that is not working well. Okay? Or that you see your sales are going down, or your market share is going down, or the number of customer complaints are increasing. It's all symptoms that you see that something is not working as well as it should. So then we do a marketing audit. As I said, go and talk to your mentor, go and talk to your manager, go and talk to the people that is actually working on these projects, who did on the previous run, say for instance. A marketing audit is a structured survey of an organization's marketing efforts. It looks at the way the marketing is planned and managed currently. And then you use a theory to compare against to see what has been done in the company and what else could be considered or should be done. What has worked, what information is still needed, what can improve. So that is what a marketing audit does. It is really just taking a snapshot and saying how well are we doing on the very basics as set out in theory. Okay, so some of the models that you can look at, and please don't be constrained by these. There's so many models that you can find for all kinds of things. Macro environment is the external environment, your competitors, customers, other models. You get the best if it's applicable. Don't use models that's not applicable. You only use the models that really talk to your topic. The micro environment, that is your customers and your competitors, etc. Closer by. Internal environment, there's a lot. Your resources available, your budget available, your capacity, your facilities, whatever may be. Risk models, positioning, etc., etc. There's a lot of models that looks at the inside. And that is what a research is all about, is to really look at the big picture and to find out exactly what is the issues underlying the symptoms that you see in your problem context. Where can you find models? Use any of the marketing, strategic or business management books you have. Or you can find models online by using the constructs of the problem, review and the objective, and search those terms in ProQuest or Google Scholar, or just if you can't really think about anything, just Google the term. Say for instance, customer satisfaction. And then I like to look at the images on Google, and you see a lot of customer satisfaction models, and you can pick one there and go and look for it in your theory books, in your handbooks. In this case, in a marketing audit, we don't discuss the theory. We just give the model, reference it properly, and then we do the comparison against what we are doing and what the theory suggests. If the examiner wants to know more about the model, the examiner can use the reference to find the original theory. So let's talk about the construct, this word that everybody is throwing around. For example, the topic is online purchases as a way to promote market growth of a particular product. So if we unpack that, the construct on the abstract side of this scale is then online shopping. What it means is that online shopping actually has a lot of variables. So if I talk about online shopping and I want to use that, I have to break it down into its components, into the variables that feed into everything that is social online shopping. So we talk then about a concept. It's a little bit more concrete. Your typical issues that customers have with online shopping may be risk, convenience, attitude, previous experience, the products that's on the online issues, and the consumer needs. If I, for instance, want to exchange something that I bought, will I be able to? What is your policy? What is the return rate, etc.? Now, on the other side of a construct, we get the variable. As we said, there's a lot of variables that goes into online shopping. It's an abstract idea, online shopping. What does it exist? What components make up online shopping? So it may be stuff like access to internet, safe payment options, product ranges, pricing, user-friendly web. So you can see online shopping, abstract. The concepts, you are picking up a lot of concepts there. Risk, but the risk also has components under it. Previous experience, products, consumer needs, all of them still have some variables under them. But then at the bottom is your actual variables, that is the base units that you are looking at, that you will ask questions about if you are doing online shopping as a topic. So how to unpack a construct? Go back to the research topic and the problem context. Say we choose the key construct, online purchases. Find a model. Really find a model. A model is a wonderful thing because it gives you a picture of the variables and the components and how they relate to each other. So here you can see online shopping, trust, and previous online shopping that may not be so positive. It feeds into your attitude towards online shopping. Some of the components there is usefulness, ease of use, convenience. They all feed into this attitude and to your intention to actually shop online. So you can see this wonderful framework that actually shows you all the components under online shopping and the intent to purchase and how they relate to each other. So online shopping may be the construct. Here are some of the concepts, and here are some of the basic variables. Okay, so now you have gathered the information from your own company through this audit. For this audit, you've talked to your manager, you've talked to your mentor and to people on the ground. So you have the information on the company side, and now you pick a applicable model and you compare. Are there gaps? If there's not gaps, it's not a problem. And you don't use all the components of a model if it's not relevant. You only use the relevant components. Barriers to doing stuff optimally, bottlenecks in the process, etc., etc. At the end of this marketing audit, you should have gained some insight on where the key problem areas are. If you did not use the correct model, you did not use sufficient information from your company to do a proper audit. So the key here is, did you gain new insight? Did it help you refine your problem? Okay, so the next part is now the problem research statement. Write a proper problem statement, develop proper research questions, formulate proper research objectives for a marketing problem. Okay, so again, the problem statement flows logically from your symptoms that you mentioned in the problem context, and from the issues that you did in the marketing audit that helped you refine this problem. It is a standalone sentence. It is not part of a long paragraph that I have to go and look and decide what you actually meant to be the problem statement. It stands alone, separately, very specific scope, less than 2 lines long. So say for instance a problem statement is understanding the factors that play a role in the customer's decision to buy online can grow the market share of product A. The wording is really important. This wording can still change to be more fluid, more logical, but what we see there is that this is a statement that we can argue about. We can say, yes, it's true, not it's true, I don't think so, etc., etc. And at the end of the research, I can actually say, yes, if I understand the factors that play a role in their decision making, I can use that to grow the market share of product A. So it can be answered, it can be debated. And it contains very clear, specific concepts. So, customer decision to buy online, grow market share specifically of product A. It says to me exactly what will be researched in this research. Okay, and I can use those concepts, those words, I can use as a base for my research questions and for my research objectives. So, specific concepts and variables in the statement, factors that play a role in the customer decisions to buy online specifically, to buy product A specifically, to grow the market share by using the specific channel of online shopping specifically for product A. So you can see how much information I was able to take from that specific problem statement. So I can use all of those to actually develop 2 to 4 research objectives. Research questions, you brainstorm the problem statement. You know what brainstorming is. I just sit down and write as many questions as I can think of on the spur of the moment. And then you actually sort that list into categories. You can say, okay, this is about online shopping, this is about product A, this is about the customer propensity to buy online. And then you can use those categories to help you develop 2 to 4 practical, doable research objectives. Research objectives is very important because there are little action plans that actually guide you to your research design, guide you to your sample population, guide you to the tools that you will be using and the questions that you will be asking, because they are the elements of a project plan in essence that will help you answer the problem statement. But they have to be achievable within the constraints of time and resources. So, do I have access to the people that I want to interview or to survey? Will I have enough time to do that? Because in your AMRT401, you only have 2 to 3 weeks per chapter, and there's 5 chapters, so the pressure gets quite a bit. So is it achievable? Is it realistic? Is it something that I can measure? And can I do it in the time frame? So the doability. You can have a wonderful research objectives, but you can't do it because you can't talk to the people. You're not allowed to actually survey or interview. Too bad. then it's not doable. Then you have to find another topic. Okay, so what is the link between the problem statement and the research objectives? So, if I say the problem statement says understanding the factors that play a role in a customer decision to buy online can grow the market share of product A, potential research objectives may be, and please look at the format of those objectives. It starts with to and it is followed by a verb because it's an action plan, okay? And it's a research verb and it's a measurable verb. To ascertain, say for instance, the profile of the target market of product A. If I don't know who the people are that's interested in product A, how am I really going to determine whether they are the people that will be willing to buy this particular product online? So second one, maybe, to research where they currently get their information on product A. You know that buying funnel that I have to know who they are and whether they are actually aware of this product. To determine what factors play a role in their decision to buy online, the current likelihood that they will buy product A online. So if you look at these four research objectives, do you think they're doable? That depends on who is my sample population and can I get access to them, etc. On the other hand, look at these four research objectives and can you see how it covers all the key aspects of the problem statement? If I manage to get the information from this research objectives, will I be able to answer the problem statement? Yes, it's true. No, it's not true. Only true in part. The answer is actually not very important because whether it's yes or no doesn't matter. I would have learned something about the actual topic while I was doing this research. Okay. So, if I do my research objectives specifically enough and doable enough, I should already be able to think about what questions should I ask these people to find out what the profile is. What is my typical questions to determine a target market profile? I can already think about who is the sample that I will ask in this particular research. Will I have access to the sample people? What tool will I use? Will I use a survey or an interview, etc., etc.? Sample size, all of that I can already start thinking about when I have a proper research objective. Sorry, that's just a reminder that came out. To determine where they currently get their information on Project A, same thing. What questions should I ask them? Do they get it from newspapers, from articles, from internet, from radio, from TV? Who is my sample and how will I gather the specific information? Will it be through a survey or an interview or a focus group to determine what factors play a role in the customer's decision to buy online? And again, you can actually say, look at the model that we looked at previously. Is it the risk factors? Is it convenience? Is it access to the internet? Is it the layout of the web page, etc.? So there's a lot of stuff that I can actually start thinking about, and there I have the base for my research design. Let's look at research design. I have to decide based on my research objectives. Will I do a qualitative methodology? Make sure you understand what is qualitative methodology. Look up the terms, the definitions from these terms, at least from 2 or 3 different sources, because each source word their definition a little bit different, and by doing that you get a different perspective on that particular term. So you are learning a little bit of a new language, if you like, how this is used in research. You can have a survey with open-ended questions where people write their stuff, but you have to look at the pros and the cons, because it takes a lot of work to read through many people's open-ended answers that they might have on the subject. You can do interviews or you can do focus groups, but again, for each of those you have to look at the pros and the cons of those tools. Quantitative methodology, there you usually use some kind of rating scale. Again, look at the various rating scales so that you can make a proper decision. Your normal one that's most often used is the Likert scale. We strongly agree, never agree, disagree, strong agree, etc. Some people bring it down to 3, some people take it up to 10 different scales. 5 is fine, really, it's fine. It's the same that you will get with a 7 or a 10 rating scale. And then you have the data analysis of secondary data such as your sales data, number of complaints from customers, etc., etc. So there's a lot of information that's actually in company or maybe in industry that you can get statistics on. So if you look at surveys versus interviews, or focus groups for that matter, surveys provide a broad overview of trends. How many people think or feel the same way? We don't know why they think or feel that way, we just understand that there's many of them that feel or think the same way. So you get a broad but fairly superficial trend that you can see. Interviews and the focus groups to a certain extent provide in-depth understanding into why they think that way, why they feel that way, why did they take that specific decision, or did they have that perception or a preference for, say, a type of intervention, marketing intervention. So your surveys give you broad general trends. You can ask more questions. It's fast to do if you have proper rating scales. It's fast to analyze, and you can do it on a large sample, which gives you a lot of representation. But unless you take a really innovative steps to get them to return it, your return rate is very low. You are very lucky if you get 25% of the people that actually responds to your survey, because people are busy, they're bored, they're not interested, etc., etc. So you need some innovative skills to actually get a good return rate. So say for instance you want 25 people to respond to your survey. You may look at sending out 100. Then you may get your 25 people responding. Interviews, in-depth understanding. You cannot ask many questions because people are going to talk to you and it takes time. So maximum about 8 questions. It's time consuming. You have to make the appointment. You must ask them if they are willing to talk to you, able to talk to you. And then you have to go and actually see them and talk to them, and you have to record it to ask their permission. If you can record it, you have to take notes. You have to go back, you have to transcribe the recording, and then only can you start the analysis. Slow to analyze because you cannot just copy and paste their answers there. You have to compare their views. and to see how many of them agree, disagree, how many mention something new, something different, etc. So you can only use a small sample. I wouldn't go for a research project like AMRT402. I wouldn't do more than 5 interviews because of the time that it takes. So now you've decided on the approach that you're going to follow and the tools that you're going to use. Now you have to identify the sample population and how you are going to pick the sample from that sample population. There's many sampling approaches. This is only a few of them. Please go back to your handbook and actually look at the sample population and the sampling approaches. You've got random, where you throw names in a hat, or you take the telephone list and you pick every 10th person, whatever, or you use a quota. Segment population into groups of shared characteristics. So for instance, you are looking at how people look at a specific product on different age groups. You can have a quota, say 10 people from teenagers, 10 people from early 20s, early 30s, early 40s. That is quotas. Okay? Stratified. Say for instance you are taking in the company, you are going to survey people and you say so many from the floor level, so many from supervisory level, so many from manager level, so many from top manager. That is stratified sampling. But there's many other, please go and look at them as well. If you have to gather demographic data, you have to motivate why. You cannot just, ask information from people and then not use it. This is where it comes to research ethics. So if you decide to gather information on their position in the company, on their genders and so on and so on, how are you going to use that data in your results? How are you going to use it to actually add value? If you're not going to use it, leave it. Okay. Research design and the role of bias. Bias, because we're human, okay? And a researcher must take a lot of effort to actually try and remove personal bias from the research. So it depends on your sample population. Why did you identify that specific population? Why couldn't it be broader or smaller or whatever made it? Why did you choose that specific sampling method? So you have to motivate that. Why did you pick those questions and not the other questions? So you can actually introduce bias by sort of leading the respondent along a certain way. You're just picking your friends as a sample population. You're only using them because it's easy. And you're only asking them the questions that you want them to answer the way that you want to answer it. So all of that can introduce researcher bias. And that is why people are very critical of your research design, and they will ask, why? Why did you do it that way? Can you motivate it? What did you do to remove bias from your particular research design? Ethical principles. I don't think we emphasize that enough. But you, on your side as a researcher, must have integrity. You must have competence and not ill wish anything on anyone. It must be to the benefit for you as a researcher as well as a participant. Autonomy. If somebody is paying for your research, are you really taking out all of the bias, or are you sort of pushing them again into a particular side. Honesty, responsibility that you take to really look after your respondents, that there's no ill coming to them. The participants has a right on justice, dignity, confidentiality, privacy, etc. So you have, as a researcher, to look after that. And if you don't, you can land actually in the court. They can take you to court for stuff that you're asking them that has got nothing to do, or you promised them confidentiality and it leaked and they lost their jobs, etc. Okay, just examples of questions in the survey. For instance, this is demographic. Put it neatly in a table that is very easy to just make a cross in. Don't scatter it all over. You know, if you open a survey and it's 20 pages long, just because a person did not really neatly structure the questions, I just close that survey. I never answer it. The neater it looks, the more compact it looks, maybe somebody will consider doing your survey. So you put the categories there for them just to tick. It's easy, it's fast, it's neat. Other types of Ricketts rating scales that is not the Ricketts scale. Say for instance, how often do you use the internet? It's very interesting to see those things. Or say for instance, where do you purchase your medicine most of the time? So you can pick more than one, but at least you start seeing a trend there. Examples of other types of rating scales, not Likert scale, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 as the most important and 5 as the least important. Rate the kind of information that you would like to receive. Okay, so there's ways of asking questions. And then the Likert scale, which is very, very often used. Again, you put it in a table format, uncluttered layout for easy. You've got the rating scale there at the top. You have the specific numbered questions here with subheadings that list to your various objectives. So if you analyze that, it is already structured nicely that you can pick it up. Okay. So if you start your assignment, you have the IMM cover page that's added when you submit it. But think about adding a title page, a table of content, give proper numbered headings, your text formatting, Arial 12, spacing 1.5, not 1, not 1.15. Your text must be justified. You must have page numbers, in-text citations with a reference list. Not a bibliography, a reference list at the end. Okay, negative marking, please. I mark so many pages where there's so many people that maybe they did not have such a strong exam or assignment, and then they come up to this negative marking and they fail. Because your structure and grammar, please look at the information at the end of your assignment, but also in the tutorial letters, up to 5 marks that you can lose. Citations, up to 5 marks that you can lose. Referencing, up to 10 marks that you can lose. And it's simple technical issues that is spelled out for you everywhere. Well, how sad if you actually lose that because you just did not bother to do the referencing or citations properly. Okay, this would be the assignment, title page. There is your module name, your name, student number, date. Just professional start to your assignment. Table of content, please look at your learner guideline or even at McGibbon content, table of content to see how it is done. The numbered headings and subheadings on the left, page numbers on the right, And you don't give a page range, you just give the first page number of that particular section. This is the end of section 1. Are there any questions? Session 2 we will do on the 10th, I think, if I remember correctly. Then we will specifically talk about the assignment. It will deal specifically about the assignment. It's a Saturday evening, and we will be doing a similar session that we will record, but hopefully by that time you already have completed, just about completed your assignment, because the due date is on the 13th. Any questions? Nobody wants to talk to me? I can see everybody is typing. Okay. Are you comfortable with starting your assignment? Have you read the assignment carefully? Looked at everything that you need to answer? Yes, I'm sure you will have questions on the 10th. What I can remember, the case study is about the selling of weed and the production of weed, which is much more a US issue than it is with us, hopefully. But yes, you have to read through that fairly long case study, complex case study, and really get to the nitty-gritties. And keep in mind that the assignment covers these 3 sections that we've covered now on the student pacer. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Okay, good night. Thank you very much for your attendance. And